praises to Ahaya Bahashim Yeshaya, Wawawak Kadash. That's all praises to the Father, in the name of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Shalom, family. I just came on here today in obedience to the Holy Spirit to put a warning out to our people. Not even just to our people, but to warn anyone who is listening to me. You guys need to protect your children. They are coming after our children. They are coming after them any way they can, physically, spiritually, educationally. They're coming for their minds, they're coming for their hearts, and they're coming for their bodies. You guys need to pray over your children, and you need to watch them. Watch and pray. Be vigilant. In today's time, in this day and age, we can't afford to be careless. Shalom.
I taught for over 20 years. In 2016 year, that's when I was teaching pre-K, and our faculty was trained in the Welcoming Schools program. If you've never heard of it, it's an anti-bullying program that celebrates diversity and requires inclusivity by abolishing children's and teachers' biased notions of family and gender norms. Welcoming Schools claims that it is creating safe and supportive environments for all students, which is taught to students as young as 4 years old. It affirms same-sex marriage, parenting, gay and lesbian relationships, and transgenderism. And it's funded by the Human Rights Campaign, the largest LGBT political lobby organization in the U.S. And for the first time in 9 years at Odom, we would be spending 6 hours of training over a non-academic topic. And I asked them another question. I said, is there a letter to inform the parents? And they said, no, we haven't talked about that. And that was a real problem for me, because the families I served had come to see me an advocate for their children. As the pre-K through 5th grade teachers that we were being instructed to come up with a definition for the word homosexual that our students could understand. And we had to be able to explain it to our students and to say that gay love was beautiful. We were informed that our library would be filled with books like this one. This book is targeted toward early childhood up to 2nd grade. Okay? And so this book, Jacob's New Dress, is a book that celebrates a little boy that wants to wear dresses to school. This is another book. It's called It's Perfectly Normal. And this is a book, let me tell you what's in this book. This is an elementary school book. It's a graphically illustrated book, as you can see. It has promiscuity, homosexual exploration, sexual intercourse, street language, masturbation techniques, abortion as an escape from unwanted pregnancy, and this book is targeted for 9 and 10-year-olds. So these books would be specially marked on the shelves, and we were to encourage our students to check them out. And our principal, Ms. Sandra McWilliams, even told us, don't call the girls girls anymore, and don't call the boys boys anymore. So I knew something, of course, was very wrong. And she said this would make us an inclusive campus. Now I'm going to tell you an example of a training that I went to. And she said, I'm going to give you a hypothetical situation, the trainer said. She says, you're a teacher and you walk into the lounge, right? And the lounge is where you eat your lunch, right? She says, you walk into the lounge and there are 2 teachers sitting at the table over here having their lunch, and you overhear a conversation they're having, and one says to the other, oh, that's why Johnny has so many problems, because he has 2 moms. And so the trainer said, now I want you to think about that, and I want you to move around the room as I give you some options of what you can do. And she said, okay, now if you hear that conversation, what that person just said, and you want help, you want to know what to do, and you want an administrator's help, go stand over there by that tree. The second option B, she said, if you are going to go straight to that teacher and you're going to confront them about what they said about Johnny having two moms, then go stand over there at that tree. And then the third option was, if you're not going to do anything about it and you're just going to mind your own business, go over there to that side of the room. So can you imagine? I knew they were gauging our commitment to the program, and they wanted to see where we would stand on this. And I remember I couldn't betray my own conscience. I thought I could lie. I could do where I knew they were going to go. And for a split second, that's exactly what I thought, right? But I couldn't do it. So there I was with two other people on that side of the room, looking at everybody else, and they looking at us. So I walked away from my teaching career of over 20 years, not knowing if I was ever going to be able to teach again. If you look at this map, we even mapped where these programs are in Austin, so we would strategically know what was going on. Why are they in these schools? Why are these not in other parts of Austin? Why have these schools been targeted? I had actually sent them emails to tell them about this situation and that I wanted to meet with them. So you know what they did? They profiled me at the door, because they have a camera. They profiled me at the door. And she says, "We know who you are." AISD does continue to do Pride Week.
Right.
It does continue to invite children to the city Pride Week. Have y'all seen what those look like? They tell teachers to invite children to go.
The pride.
They actually, this past year, took kids on buses.
Hands! Let me see your hands!
The desperate search led police to this Fort Worth hotel room. Then, once inside, hidden under a pile of clothes,
Got her! We got her!
the 8-year-old girl held captive by this man, Michael Webb, now serving a life sentence for kidnapping.
We have her.
She had been missing for 8 excruciating hours, her mother calling 911.
Oh my God, my daughter's kidnapped.
Snatched off the street in broad daylight while walking with her mom. All of it captured on a doorbell camera.
Help me, please. My daughter just got kidnapped.
Police put out an Amber Alert, and a tip led officers to the same hotel earlier. But in a tearful confession, Webb admitted he hid the girl in a laundry basket and threatened her to keep quiet.
I told her that if she said anything, that I would do something to her parents. And if I was in jail, I would have my friends to do it.
PD, open the door.
But police returned.
You're gonna be okay.
Oftentimes, that is not what happens. You absolutely can hear that in the video. They are so happy to have gotten her back alive.
And miraculously, back home.
I want to talk a little bit more about these forced, unannounced, warrantless home searches of people who have the audacity to take responsibility for their children and for their children's education. We call them homeschoolers. The government's about to call them criminals and put them under the microscope. Just turn your kids over to the government. They said in order to legally homeschool in the state of Maryland, parents would be required to allow a representative of the county board to observe instruction at the family's primary homeschooling location at least twice a year. So you're going to pay taxes for some bureaucrat to sit there and say, all right, show me how you teach. What happens when the government has a monopoly on the use of force, or when the government takes over the minds of young children rather than their parents who know them best and who love them? The government, as we've seen from the time of Plato, scheming as to how they could get rid of the family. That was a whole part of Plato, his analysis. I mean, he wanted to make sure that nobody knew who their parents were. That was a big part of Plato's Republic. You don't even know who your parents are. You'll be raised by the state. The state will be your mother and father, your security blanket. And you will do what they say. We will educate them so they are ours. And that's been the plan of every authoritarian dictator, every Marxist dictator since. Get them early, and you got them for the rest of their life. They point out lawmakers in the state of California are now pushing for families who homeschool their children to be subject to involuntary home visits from state employees.
Witnesses described it as brutal and vicious. A team of German police officers with a battering ram stormed the residence of the Wunderlich family, shown here at a homeschooling conference last year. The raid near Darmstadt last week took all 4 of the family's children into state custody. The only legal grounds were that the parents, Dirk and Petra Wunderlich, continued to homeschool their children. There were no other allegations of abuse or neglect. A German family court judge also authorized the police to use force against the Wunderlich children if they resisted. Behind the raid was the notorious Jugendamt, or youth office. Many of the German parents that have run afoul of the Jugendamt have had their lives ruined. They've been taken in and out of court, been fined thousands of euros, some have been thrown in jail, and some have lost their children. A few years ago, the Wunderlichs fled Germany to avoid having their children taken, but the need for employment forced them to return. In an interview in Berlin last year, Dirk Wunderlich said he was prepared to go to jail rather than send his children to school.
You can do what you want. My children don't go to school.
And it demonstrates why the asylum case of another German homeschool family, the Romaikas, is so important. The Romaikas fled German persecution of homeschoolers and were granted asylum by an immigration judge. The Obama administration wants the Romaikas sent back to Germany, where they could face the same fate as the Wunderlichs. Witnesses said when Petra Wunderlich tried to give her daughter a kiss and hug goodbye, one of the police officers pushed her away and said it's too late for that. The children were taken to unknown locations. Officials told the parents they would not be seeing their children anytime soon.
It'll leave the burden of proof on parents to prove that they are fit to be parents who can homeschool their kids. And so if this increase in government oversight becomes law, writes the Washington Examiner, it would reduce the valid legal option of homeschooling from a fundamental parental right to direct the education and the school choice of children to compelled consent to government intrusion upon the sanctity and privacy of the home and of school choice. Because we're going to have a full East German Stasi state here. As Eric Schmidt said, why are you concerned about this if you got nothing to hide, right? That's going to be the attitude. They say merely by filing an affidavit, they can register their homes as private schools, says the little Nazi lawmaker who says, this is not good enough. Am I going to have to file an affidavit to have children in the first place? Am I going to have the permission of the state to become a parent? Where does this end? Where does this end?
I felt like the system was failing my children, and that's when I made the decision to homeschool.
Mother Kiari Harris was fed up. She says her 2 elementary school-aged children weren't excelling at their failing Buffalo public schools. So she filed these documents at Buffalo City Hall, informing the district of her intent to homeschool her children. According to the documents she provided to 7 Eyewitness News, they're dated December 7th, 2016, and the district says here it received her paperwork.
I spoke directly to the homeschool coordinator, and she told me that from this point on, my children were officially unenrolled from school.
But she says a week later, CPS called, wondering why her kids weren't in school.
I told them that my children were homeschooled now, and I said that I can furnish the documents if they need to see it.
Harris says she went on with her homeschooling, but then, less than a month later,
I was confronted by the CPS workers and the Buffalo Police Department, and they said, well, it's too late now to show these papers. The judge has already made the order. We have to take your children. But they never did show me the order. And so since they didn't show me the order, I said, well, I'm not just going to give you my children. And from that point, they arrested me and said that I was obstructing the court order.
Harris says she hasn't seen her 2 children in 3 weeks. They've been living in a foster care institution.
I'm just a mother whose children have been torn from her arms.
This homeschool parent is under attack.
Inside Erie County Family Court, a judge denying the request to reunite mother Kiari Harris and her 2 children after nearly 4 weeks apart, instead granting Harris 2 hours per week of supervised visitation.
The trauma and duress that these children are going through right now, not being with their mother, is unconscionable.
Harris's case is going national. The college-educated Buffalo parent says she tried to homeschool her children, but instead ended up in jail.
This can happen to anyone.
Franco had Catholic-run hospitals steal babies. In a lot of cases, nurses would secretly swap newborn babies with dead babies preserved in ice in order to fool the parents into thinking that the babies had suddenly died. It is estimated that as many as 300,000 babies had been stolen over the course of 5 decades. Surprisingly, Spain's Catholic Church continued the practice until 1987. The entire Catholic institution has been systematically covering up these cases all over the world in order to preserve their image. In February 2014, a report from UN's Geneva-based Committee on the Rights of the Child stated that the Holy See has consistently placed the preservation of the reputation of the Church and the protection of the perpetrators above children's best interests. But there's an even darker story to this. Dutch journalist Job Domen discovered the story of a young boy from a Catholic boarding school who in the 1950s was put into a psych ward ran by the church and forcibly castrated. At least 10 other similar cases of forced castration have been committed by the Dutch Catholic Church.
This is the Jesuit oath. I do further promise and declare that I will have no opinion or will of my own, or any mental reservation whatever, even as a corpse or cadaver, but will unhesitatingly obey each and every command that I may receive from my superiors in the militia of the Pope. I furthermore promise and declare that I will make and wage relentless war, as I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate Protestants and liberals from the face of the whole earth. I will neither spare age, sex, or condition. I will hang, burn, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the wall in order to annihilate forever their execrable race.